Hi, my name's Thalassa, and 3 years ago, my parents told me loyalty has consequences right before they cut off my tuition, erased my name from family accounts, and watched me vanish like I was never theirs to begin with. Now they're writing again, calling it a new beginning, but the only thing new is that I stopped needing them to see me. What would you do if the people who forgot your name suddenly wanted your forgiveness? Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment below because this story might echo something you've lived through too. The message came on a Tuesday morning, tucked between spam emails and a recipe newsletter I'd forgotten to unsubscribe from. It was from my father. "We miss you. Maybe it's time we reconnect." No subject line. No, "Hi, honey." Just that. I stared at it. 3 sentences that should have felt warm, should have pulled at some buried longing, but all I felt was the cold certainty in my chest. The kind that used to hit me when I walked into a room full of people who acted like I wasn't there. And just like that, I was back in Spokane again, 3 years ago. December. The dinner wasn't technically a birthday party, just a family gathering for the twins, as my mother had insisted on calling it in the group text. But from the moment I walked in, it was clear. This was Callista's night. There were silver balloons that read C, table cards with her name in looping cursive. Even the cake had "To Our Shining Star" piped in buttercream. I stood by the coat rack, coat still on, watching my mother adjust the candles on the long table. She was wearing her navy dress, the one she saved for photo ops. "Don't just stand there, Thalassa," she called without looking at me. "Help Callie with her sash." Her sash. Callista was being helped into a pale gold satin wrap, laughing with 2 of our cousins. She looked like someone out of a bridal catalog. Flawless skin, long limbs, and that easy way of talking that made people lean in and nod. No one looked at me. No one ever did. Dinner started. Everyone sat according to a chart my mother had made, Callista front and center between Dad and Uncle Evan. I was placed at the end, right next to the kitchen door, where the staff kept brushing past with plates. Callista's setting had a napkin folded into a maple leaf. My spot had a paper napkin, half unfolded, one corner stained with lipstick. I blinked. It felt absurd, childish, like something out of a sitcom, so I picked it up, smoothed it flat, and tried folding it to match hers. Took me 5 minutes. Nobody noticed. When the champagne came out, I already knew what was coming. My father stood, glass raised, and began the toast. "To our pride and joy, Callista, you've made us so proud. Watching you grow into the woman you are today, it's been the greatest blessing of our lives." The room clapped. People turned to smile at her. She blushed, murmured something humble. My mother dabbed at her eye. I sat frozen. My name hadn't been spoken. Not once. I glanced down at the napkin I'd folded, now slightly torn at the edge, and quietly pushed back my chair. I muttered something about needing to call a friend. No one stopped me. No one even looked up. Outside, the December air hit like a slap. I stood there on the porch, hands bare, breath sharp in my chest, and I knew I wasn't coming back. They'd made it clear. I wasn't one of them. I was a placeholder, a footnote in someone else's story. So I packed that night, took the bus the next morning, left the key on the counter, no note, no goodbye. And now, 3 years later, he thinks he can just say, "We miss you?" I never replied, but I remember exactly why I left. I hovered my cursor over the message again, not clicking, just staring. It sat there like a ghost, quiet, vague, pretending not to carry the weight of 1,000 sharp silences. "We miss you. Maybe it's time we reconnect." Funny, because before silence, there was something worse. There was punishment, carefully wrapped in the language of family values. I remember being 19 and naive enough to believe that fairness had a place in our house. It was a Saturday afternoon. Callista was poking fun at our cousin Rowan, something about her weight and the way she dressed for her job at the grocery store. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I'd stood up, voice steady, and said, "That's not okay. She's working and paying her way. That takes a lot more strength than standing around making fun of people." The room went still. Callista blinked at me like I'd grown a second head. My mother's lips tightened. That night, nothing happened. No arguments, no apologies, just smiles stretched too tightly and a weird stillness at dinner. Then Monday came. "Your tuition request for next quarter won't be covered," my mother said over the phone, like she was reading from a weather report. I remember standing there in the campus cafe, phone pressed to my ear, waiting for some kind of explanation. When I asked why, she said, "We don't fund disloyalty, Thalassa." That was it. No screaming, no warning, just a line drawn in the sand with a single word: loyalty. Except loyalty, in her dictionary, didn't mean honesty or integrity, it meant obedience. Callista still got her allowance, still had gas money, still flew out to music festivals while I started working weekends at the campus library and doing late-night data entry for the admissions office. It was hard, but it was also clarifying. That winter, Spokane had one of the worst cold snaps in years. I was walking across the icy parking lot behind my dorm when I slipped, head first. I must have blacked out for a few minutes because the next thing I knew, I was in the ER with a throbbing skull and a nurse asking who she should call. I gave her the home number. Even then, I still hoped. It rang 3 times. Then my mother picked up. There was a pause. Then she said, clear as glass. She left. Let her stay gone. And she hung up. The nurse blinked. "Would you like us to try someone else?" "No," I whispered. "It's fine." It wasn't, but I said it anyway. They kept me overnight for observation. My roommate, Erin, came to get me the next morning. We stopped for coffee on the way back and she asked if I was okay. I lied. Just a mild concussion. But what I really wanted to say was this. Silence isn't peace. It's just how people punish you for not making their lives easier. I didn't say that out loud. I wasn't sure I could, not yet. But something hardened in me that day. I stopped sending holiday texts. I quit following Callista on Instagram. I deleted all our family contacts, one by one, like pulling splinters. It didn't make me feel lighter, but it made it easier to breathe. Now, years later, they show up in my inbox with soft words and open arms. I look back at the screen. That message, still blinking in its stillness. It's time we reconnect. I tilt my head slightly. Now you want connection? Now that she's moved across the country? Now that the spotlight has shifted and the golden child isn't around to anchor your status dinners? Now you remember me? I don't reply. I close the laptop. Funny how they only want connection after I stopped needing it. I shut the laptop but didn't move from the couch. The message still burned behind my eyes like a stain. Maybe it's time we reconnect. Just dinner, no pressure. We're different people now. Different people? I stood and walked to the kitchen, half on autopilot, flipped the kettle on like I was about to brew tea, but didn't. I just needed something to do with my hands. Then I sat back down, opened my laptop again, and this time I didn't hover. I clicked. The message unfolded in full, pretending to be harmless. Friendly. Casual. That same tone they used when I was younger, when they needed something but didn't want to say it outright. I read it twice, then I opened a new tab. Old habits die hard. I typed in the name of my old credit union, the one I hadn't touched since college. 2-factor authentication. A verification code. I typed it in. What was I expecting? I'm not sure. Maybe just closure. The dashboard opened. One of the savings accounts blinked up, dormant, untouched, except it wasn't empty. It was closed, with a big red banner across it. Account terminated. Please contact branch. That wasn't right. I never closed it. My stomach tensed, but I clicked further, looked at linked account activities. Nothing recent, but then something odd in the notifications tab. Someone had submitted a request to verify identity on my behalf last month. It had been denied. I narrowed my eyes. Something tugged at me. I opened another browser and typed in the county office website, search tools, property records. I plugged in my full legal name, Thalassa DeWitt. Bingo. Request for co-signature on home refinance. The same house I grew up in, submitted by my parents. 2 weeks ago. I leaned back in the chair, heart pounding, but not surprised. Not really. So that's what this is, I said out loud. Reconnect? No, try re-leverage, because I was still technically listed on that deed, back when Grandpa left it to all of us and they forgot to remove my name when they bought out the other shares. Cheap, shady, but legal. And now they needed me, not for dinner, not for love, for a signature. I should have laughed, but it didn't feel funny. It felt familiar. I closed the tab, opened my email, needing a distraction. At the top of my inbox sat a message from a foundation I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Thank you for your generous contribution." I clicked, brows pinched. It was a formal letter, professional, well-written. Dear Ms. Thalassa DeWitt, thank you for your generous $5,000 contribution to the Women in Youth Leadership Gala. Your support makes all the difference. It went on, filled with language about empowerment, community outreach, and the honor of having Callista DeWitt serve as the evening's spokesperson. I blinked. I didn't donate a dime, but there was my name, right there in print. So I searched it. The event, the photos, the guest list. Sure enough, there she was. Callista, standing at a podium, dazzling in some champagne-colored dress, holding a glass trophy. Beside her name on the placard, funded in part by Thalassa DeWitt. Unreal. No one had even called me. I hadn't been invited. I didn't even know the event existed. But there I was, on the brochure, on the donation list. They used my name like a resource, a prop. And why not? To them, I wasn't a person. I was a tool, a credit score, a convenient legacy name they could flash when needed, when they wanted to look inclusive, like they hadn't driven their other daughter halfway out of the family on an empty gas tank. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I sat still, breathing in the full, ugly truth of it. They didn't want me back. They wanted what I still legally represented. The bank account, the signature, the last shreds of credibility I hadn't realized they were still holding on to. I stared at the message again. Maybe it's time we reconnect. I deleted the draft I'd started earlier. Not replying felt different now. It didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like a choice, a powerful one. No one gets to ghost you and then act like they're reaching out of kindness. I shut the email. Then I stood and walked to the closet, pulled down a hard drive from the top shelf, plugged it in, clicked open a folder I hadn't touched in years. Things they forgot I kept. Old photos, screenshots, letters. One particularly telling email from Callista accidentally forwarded to me in college. So many receipts. Not just proof, context. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I wasn't deleting anything. They wanted to reconnect? Good. They should be reminded who I am. They forgot. I don't forget. That thought circled in my chest long after I'd closed the laptop. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence of the apartment wrap around me like a weighted blanket. But silence doesn't always mean peace. There's something quietly terrifying about realizing your absence wasn't just unnoticed, it was rewritten. I crossed the room to the small filing cabinet tucked beside my desk, the one I never opened unless I was feeling brave or furious. Tonight I was both. Inside was a hard copy of every document I'd scanned over the years. I grabbed the brown accordion folder marked Personal 1719, flipped it open, and started sorting papers across the dining table. The first stack was from when I got my driver's license, age 17. Dad had taken me to the used lot on Sprague Avenue. "It's time you had your own car," he'd said. The title said it loud and clear. Registered owner, Thalassa DeWitt. I remembered how proud I was. I'd even kept the pink slip in a protective sleeve like it was a diploma. Then I picked up the second paper, dated barely 8 months later, 2 weeks after I'd moved out for college. Title change request, ownership transfer to Callista DeWitt. My chest tightened. I never authorized that. I never even knew it happened. I kept going. Bank account statements from a shared savings account opened when I was 16. One my parents insisted I keep for emergencies. It had $312 when I left for Spokane. 1 month later, emptied, then closed. The new account number had Callista's initials. There was no letter, no call, not even a "just so you know." They hadn't just let me go. They'd been replacing me in real time. The paper trail told the truth. They didn't cut ties. They reallocated them. I moved slower now, each document another quiet slap to the face, 100 little betrayals lined up like soldiers. And then, in the folder labeled College Savings, I found it, a printout from when I was 10 years old. Dad had opened the account at Washington First Credit Union, even took a photo with me holding the starter check. "Your future's in here," he'd said. I remember that. I'd deposited every babysitting dollar I ever made. Now, balance, $3.47. I logged into the account portal to double-check. The transaction history unfolded like a punch to the ribs. $2,000, Fashion Institute application fee, $600, flight to NYC, $1,800, apartment deposit in Manhattan, $4,500, boutique designer wardrobe essentials, all within a 6-week period. Recipient listed? Callista, 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 all from my account. I pressed my knuckles into my temple and tried to remember if I ever authorized access. I didn't. They must have used the joint authorization clause when I was a minor, left themselves as co-signers, and when I left, they cleaned house. I walked to the printer, silent. My hands worked like they had a mind of their own, clicking, printing, stacking. Within the hour, my entire dining table was covered. Receipts, statements, PDF printouts, legal forms I barely remembered signing. I spread them out like evidence in a courtroom, and in the center, I laid the one document that made my breath catch. Beneficiary transfer authorization, parent signature only, dated during my freshman year. They'd emptied my savings to fund her rise, and left me wondering why I couldn't pay for textbooks without overdrafting. I stood over the table, the documents forming a constellation of cruelty. They hadn't just pushed me out. They'd mined what I left behind. And now they wanted dinner, a fresh start, a seat at their table, but the only thing I'd bring was a stack of paper and a memory that refused to fade. I ran my fingers across the top of one page, stared at the line where my name used to be. Then I closed the folder gently. I didn't slam it, didn't curse, just whispered out loud, to no one and everyone, "If they want dinner, I'll bring receipts." They don't get to erase me and then ask me to sit nicely at their table. That line kept playing in my head like background static as I zipped up my overnight bag. The invitation to my cousin Sadie's wedding sat on the counter, unopened for days. They said she insisted I come. I'd met her 3 times. "It's about healing," the email said. "A new beginning for everyone." I said yes. Not because I believed them, but because part of me needed proof. Tangible, public, inescapable proof that I wasn't imagining what they'd done to me, that it wasn't all just me being sensitive or misunderstanding, as they like to say. I wasn't going for closure. I was going for clarity. The venue was in Spokane, back where everything started. A converted barn with string lights and a faux rustic vibe that made everything look like a catalog page. At check-in, the woman at the front table handed me a card. "Table 17, she smiled. "Down that way." I followed the direction of her finger and stopped halfway. Table 17 sat directly outside the restrooms, not near, not beside, directly in front. So close I could hear the toilet flush and someone complain about the smell. And the place card? Teresa. T-H-E-R-E-S-A. I picked it up slowly, as if maybe the ink would magically reorder itself into the name I'd carried my whole life. "That's not my name," I told the server, my voice steady. He glanced down, looked mortified. "Oh, I'm sorry. That's what the family submitted." Of course they did. I placed the card back down. Even now I was a typo in their story. From my seat, I could see the bridal table, front and center, bathed in soft amber lights. Callista sat at the far end, legs crossed, skin glowing, laughing with a fork in one hand like she'd never known struggle in her life. A man leaned in close to whisper something in her ear, and she threw her head back in that perfectly choreographed way she always did, and for a second it hit me, not jealousy, not even bitterness, just exhaustion. I stood and walked outside. The air was sharp, cold enough to bite, but I needed the silence. My breath formed small clouds in front of me. I leaned against the wooden railing of the porch, the music inside faint and tinny. And that's when I saw it. A faded line of ink, barely visible on my inner wrist. I hadn't noticed it in years, but under the string lights it caught the faintest glimmer. "You are not invisible." I wrote it on myself every week in college with a fine-point Sharpie. It was a ritual, before exams, before interviews, sometimes just to survive Thursdays. I thought it had long faded. Apparently not. I looked at it now and felt the weight of every night I stayed silent, every time I swallowed my words instead of letting them fly, every time I thought if I just kept my head down, someone might finally notice me standing there. But silence doesn't save you. It buries you. I started walking toward the parking lot. My heels clicked against the gravel like a metronome counting down to retreat. I was halfway to my car when I stopped, literally stopped, like someone had grabbed my shoulders from behind, and suddenly I was back in the ER, years ago, staring at the nurse who asked if I had someone to call. I had dialed home. I had tried. She left, let her stay gone. I stared at the horizon, the sun now dipping behind the evergreens. They'd already written me out. Walking away again wouldn't teach them anything. It wouldn't protect me. You walk away once, they think it's permission to erase you again. And again. Not this time. This time, I wasn't leaving. Not emotionally. Not legally. This time, I was watching. And I was collecting. That night, back in my apartment in Seattle, I changed into sweatpants, poured myself a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. I didn't write a letter or a reply. I searched Washington state family law attorneys. It wasn't about revenge. It was about documentation, clarity, protecting whatever pieces of me they hadn't already carved up and passed around like wedding cake. I made a list. Assets, accounts, property, shared investments, anything that could be tied to my name, because they wanted peace. But I wanted the truth. They wanted peace. I wanted the truth. And truth doesn't come with flowers or candlelight. It doesn't show up wearing a soft sweater and an apologetic smile. It starts in silence, in the long stretched moment after someone says, "We didn't mean harm," and before you respond, "But you did." That morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a half-empty mug of coffee and a heart that had gone colder than anything in the cup. I opened my laptop, staring at the bookmarked folder labeled Personal Finance, Active. I had been thinking about moving, starting somewhere completely fresh, maybe Oregon, maybe Arizona, just far enough where family wouldn't be able to accidentally run into me at Trader Joe's. I filled out the first steps of a mortgage pre-approval, uploaded the requested documents, and hit submit. I figured I'd hear back in a few days, but it only took 20 minutes. Denied. Significant derogatory item, $19,800 unpaid revolving credit. Opened 2009. I blinked at the screen. I hadn't even owned a credit card in 2009. I was 17. Still taking city buses to Spokane Community College, still working the front desk at the student library, still counting quarters for ramen and loose-leaf tea from Dollar Tree. I called the number on the report. A robotic voice guided me through menus until a live agent answered. "Can I help verify the debt?" I asked. He pulled up the account. "This was opened under your name and social security number." The card was issued to a secondary user, Vera DeWitt. I froze. "My mother?" I asked, though I already knew. "Yes, ma'am. It was used primarily for travel expenses and rent in New York. There are also charges at Saks Fifth Avenue and a media agency." That was Callista's first internship, the big New York summer they used to toast at dinner parties. I remembered her photos, the hotel suite, the designer bag she swore she bought on sale. They didn't just steal money, they stole my future access to it. After the call, I sat for a long time, not thinking, just existing. A stillness you only enter when something foundational slips out from under you. I wasn't even angry yet. Not then. That came later. Much later. Later that night, around 11, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. A message request. From a name I didn't recognize at first. Jordan. Last name familiar, though. She'd gone to college with Callista. Used to be on the debate team, I think. The message said, "Hey, I know we've never spoken, but I thought you should hear this. Someone tagged me in this old clip tonight, and I remembered who she was talking about." Attached was a link to a podcast episode, dated 3 years ago. The clip opened mid-laugh, Callista's voice, unmistakable. My sister? Oh God, my mom always said she was a mistake, but we kept her around. She was useful. Like, she'd do the boring stuff so we didn't have to. Another laugh, from the host this time. And she didn't mind? Who knows? She never really spoke up. She was just there. The clip ended. I stared at the screen. The toothbrush was still in my hand. Useful, a mistake, just there. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my computer again and attached the audio to an email, sent it straight to my lawyer with one line. If they want a legacy, they'll need to spell mine right this time. By morning, my attorney had replied. She was drafting a formal inquiry into the family trust, something about asset tracing and potential misuse of dependent accounts. I don't need their money, I wrote back. Understood, she said, but you're entitled to what was done in your name. And I was. I wasn't after revenge. I was after documentation, paper, proof, not because I needed validation anymore, but because people forget. They lie. They shift timelines, they soften memories, but ledgers don't forget, signatures don't lie, and credit reports, they remember everything. So I gathered it all, PDFs, scans, screenshots, voicemails, every trace they thought had disappeared into silence. If they wanted silence, they should have never left me receipts. I didn't scream, I moved, and sometimes movement is louder than any outburst. Sometimes motion, measured, strategic, unapologetic, is how you shift the ground beneath their feet. My attorney had barely hit send on the request letter before the tremor began. It wasn't a lawsuit, not yet. It was just a question they couldn't afford to answer honestly. Please provide a certified copy of the original last will and testament of Mr. Bernard DeWitt, dated prior to 2013. That was it. That one sentence, and yet I knew the moment they received it, because Callista posted a photo that afternoon, her and Mom clinking glasses over oysters at the Davenport Hotel in Spokane. Legacy lunch, the caption read. Legacy, interesting word for people who altered someone else's. I called my grandfather's former attorney the same day. I still had his name scribbled in an old notebook from high school when Grandpa let me sit through a few of his real estate meetings just to learn. Mr. Hanley? I asked, steady but clear. There was a pause, then warm recognition. Well now, Miss Thalassa, you sound older than I remember. I am, I said, and I need your help. We arranged a call. He remembered me clearly. Remembered my grandfather's version of the will even more. There was a copy, he said, where your name was the only successor. Soul. My throat tightened. And then? Your mother and Mr. Lowell came in requesting a redraft, said Bernard had verbalized new wishes, but I never heard that from him directly. He hesitated. I kept the original for record purposes. I'll have the office send you a certified copy. I exhaled, not relief, just confirmation. They didn't just forget me, they rewrote me, and now they were going to feel what it meant to be remembered properly. That weekend, I visited Aunt Malis. She still lived on the north end of town in the same split-level ranch house with the pink shutters and the creaky porch swing. She'd always been more Switzerland than sibling, distant but not cruel. We made tea, sat in the kitchen, small talk, nothing sharp. Then, while heading to the guest bathroom, I passed her living room mantel, a family photo, all of us. Christmas, maybe 2015. Callista's curls were perfect as always. Dad wore one of those sweaters that looks like it came from a catalog, and in the middle, right above where I knew I'd been standing, a sticker. One of those gold reflective smiley face ones teachers use on spelling tests, stuck right over my face. I blinked. Surely not. My cousin, Melis's daughter, walked by, saw me staring. She leaned in and whispered, "Mom didn't want guests asking who you were." My jaw clenched. Not even my silence was safe anymore. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me erased. When I got back to Seattle that night, I stared at the photo I'd snapped on my phone. I debated posting it, letting the world see just how small I'd been made to feel. But I didn't. I sent it to my lawyer instead, with a note. "This is how they remember me." She responded within an hour. "Thank you. It tells the court more than they ever will." And I knew she was right. Still, that night, I sat at the edge of my bed, scrolling through old messages, saved voicemails, even screenshots. I wasn't collecting for a lawsuit. I was collecting for the younger me, the girl who begged to be seen and kept being told she was too sensitive, too much, or making drama. That girl deserved a file folder with her name on it, spelled correctly. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed. A text. It was my cousin again. "I see you, I always did. If you need a witness, I'm here." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Thank you, I might." And I meant it. They wanted a quiet rewrite. I brought back the original script. But they didn't stop there. Because people like Vera DeWitt never end things cleanly. They don't walk away. They strike first. And when they sense you've built something solid, something their stories can't stain, they reach for the one thing you've already had to fight for: your name. The email landed the night before the hearing. It was sent anonymously to the board of my nonprofit, blind copy to all 6 directors. Subject line, "Urgent concern regarding executive leadership." Inside, a scanned document branded like a therapist's report, neatly formatted, labeled "confidential." It claimed that, years ago, I'd made violent threats toward family members during an emotional episode, said I'd once been hospitalized briefly and recommended for long-term psychological care. There were no details, no dates, just vague weaponized language designed to trigger alarm. But what Vera hadn't anticipated was memory. One of our board members, Trent, was a former school principal. He'd seen a letter once, almost identical, sent to try and remove his own son from a scholarship list. The formatting, the phrasing, even the line breaks, all the same. He flagged it, not just for what it was, but for what it tried to be. He called me that same evening. "Thalassa," he said, "we're not backing away. I've seen this kind of attack before. You don't deserve it." For a moment, I couldn't even answer. Not from fear, from something else. For the first time, someone stood in front of me before I had to stand up for myself. The hearing still loomed the next morning, but that night I slept, because even lies, when exposed early, don't survive sunlight. The next week, our nonprofit hosted a small donor gala in Seattle. Nothing flashy, just community support, volunteers, and stories of the work we'd done together. As I walked between tables, I noticed something quiet, something simple. Each napkin had been folded into the shape of a leaf, the same fold I'd done 3 years ago, in silence, with a crumpled paper napkin, trying to make myself feel like I belonged. This time, they weren't crumpled. They were crisp, green, symmetrical. A teenager in a volunteer vest asked, "Hey, why leaves?" I smiled, because even what's meant to be thrown away can still be shaped into something beautiful. She nodded slowly, then grinned. "That's cool." I moved on, but her question lingered, because I hadn't realized until just then how much I'd changed the ending. At the courthouse in Spokane, the air was sharp with late spring chill. Not winter anymore, but not quite warmth either. They showed up, of course, Vera in a taupe suit, sunglasses that didn't quite hide her disdain. Callista beside her, hair curled, lips pursed like the world owed her explanation. And Lowell, arms crossed, face unreadable, like he was waiting for the show to start. But there wasn't going to be a show. There was going to be a record. Inside the chamber, my lawyer stood with me. The judge asked if I had anything to present. I nodded. She handed over the certified copy of my grandfather's will, the one drafted before revisions, the one where I was named sole successor to his education endowment fund, a fund meant to sponsor first-generation students, the very thing I'd built my nonprofit around. Then I stepped forward, and I said only this. This clause was changed without the testator's direct consent. I am not asking for reversal. I'm not seeking retribution. I'm entering this into the record, because legacy is more than dollars. It's truth. Then I reached into my folder and pulled out a signed waiver. I don't want the money, I said. I want the name back. Silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty but exact. My name had been erased from the will, but it would be printed on that court transcript beside the words original successor, and no one, no narrative, could alter that now. Outside the courthouse, Callista caught up to me. So what now? You feel superior? She hissed. I paused, turned toward her. No, just finally equal, I said. That's worse for you, isn't it? She didn't reply. But the look in her eyes said enough. The control she'd been raised on, the hierarchy she thrived in, didn't hold anymore. We were the same. 2 daughters of the same mother. Only difference? I stopped needing their approval, and they never stopped chasing control. They wanted me erased. I left a signature instead. And still, no apology, not even an attempt. What came next wasn't some grand unraveling, no explosive fallout, just a whimper wrapped in fake grace. Vera's email arrived 2 days after the hearing. Subject: possibility of reconnection. The message was short, sterile. We've been thinking of attending one of your nonprofit events. We believe in healing. Let us know. There was no mention of the forged letter, no ownership of what they'd done, just a lazy hand extended, not to rebuild, only to reposition. I left it unread. Letting it sit in my inbox was its own kind of reply. A week later, I saw Callista pop up on social media. Her profile banner had changed to a filtered headshot, arms crossed confidently beneath the phrase, "Women supporting women." She posted a long caption about how she'd learned so much through challenges and was now dedicated to mentorship and visibility. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't feel the sting I used to. I just scrolled past her like any other marketing campaign that wasn't meant for me. The next month, I visited one of the youth shelters my foundation helps fund. No press, no photographers, just me and a trunk full of donated books and art supplies. It was a cloudy Wednesday. Seattle was being its usual gray self. Inside, the room was warm and chaotic, in the way only a room full of 8-year-olds can be. One girl, maybe 6, sat at a corner table alone. She had a juice box, a crooked smile, and a napkin she kept folding with careful fingers. She looked up when I approached. "Look," she said, holding it up proudly. "It's a leaf." It wasn't quite symmetrical. The fold was off, and one corner poked out, but it was hers. I knelt down beside her. "It's beautiful," I said, meaning every word. "You didn't copy anyone, you made your own kind." She beamed. And for a second, I saw myself, not the girl at the dinner table, folding her shame into a shape that wouldn't cause a scene, but someone new. Someone who didn't have to earn space, didn't have to mimic others to be safe. Someone with her own kind of beautiful. I didn't respond to Vera, didn't block her either. Some ghosts are more powerful when you let them knock on a door that won't open. The legal request I filed was granted. My name was reinstated in all public records tied to my grandfather's educational endowment. The revised documents now list me not only as founder, but as intended successor. I never touched a cent of that fund. Instead, I accepted a board seat. Earned, not inherited, and I made one recorded statement at the closing meeting. I didn't burn down their house. I just stopped trying to knock on the door. Later that month, I cleaned out a drawer in my closet and found an old journal, the kind with soft edges and pages I'd once filled with quotes and messy dreams. On the first page, faint but still visible, was the ink I'd written over and over in college. "You are not invisible." I ran my fingers over the letters. It didn't sting anymore. Now it was a reminder, not of pain, but of the quiet promise I'd kept to myself when no one else did. I don't pretend everything's tied up in a bow. Callista will always be Callista. Vera will always believe she did what was best. But I no longer wait for that to change. Some families teach you who you are, others teach you who you'll never be, and both are teachers. Do I forgive them? I'm not sure. But I remember, and that's enough.